Today's video is an important one: how to fertilize your roses, and specifically, what's the best time of the year to fertilize your roses? And I would argue it's in the spring after your first spring pruning. You're setting the stage for good growth in the spring, and with some tricks in this video, you're setting the stage for longevity throughout the season. We're going to talk about things like slow release nitrogen, how that can be a benefit, how a soil test is extremely important and why I need potassium, and lastly, how there's benefits to your local farm supply to provide some slow release fertilizers that you may not find in the big box stores. One of the reasons the spring is an important time to fertilize, especially after spring pruning, is over the course of 1 to 2 months, your roses are really going to grow a lot of leaves and blooms, so they're looking for that energy. But I also want you to focus on the long game. Your roses are going to grow regardless in the spring and kind of jump out of the garden, but you want to sustain them through the early to middle part of the summer, and that's why I'm a big believer in a lot of slow release products and also organics, things like cottonseed meal, alfalfa pellets, a rose or holly tone, which have a mix of a lot of those. When you do your fertilization, what you're focusing in on is the drip line of the roses. As you can see here, we've got our roses growing, and we want to spread our fertilizer out, not right along the canes, not right along the crown or the bud union. Instead, we want to be a circle, a ring around the roses themselves. And sometimes if I get it a little too close to the canes after I inspect them, I just pull it back with my hands and kind of incorporate it into the soil. So again, we're not dumping it out right onto the rose itself. Instead, we want to have a ring around the roses, because you got to keep in mind those roots on your roses are at least growing as wide as the leaves and cane, or otherwise known as a drip line. Here I'm showing 3 different fertilizers that I like to put down. 2 of them apply to your area pretty much no matter what. The first one is 3800, 38% nitrogen. You might say, Eric, that is a lot of nitrogen. You're going to burn those roses. This is slow release nitroform, urea formaldehyde. This will release nitrogen over the course of the whole summer and spring, 3 to 5 months. So I do this once in the spring at pruning, and that's it. Over 70% of this is slow release nitrogen. That's something pretty much all of us can use. That's going to be your meat and potatoes for the whole growing season. The other one I want you to look for, especially at a local farm supply store, is something that's a slow release similar to Osmocote, which can be expensive in the big box stores. The one I use here, 21612, that is a local one at Core Farm in Smithfield, North Carolina. Excellent local farm supply. If you don't live locally, I just suggest you look at any of the farm supplies in your area. That has up to 16% slow release nitrogen, but also gives me some slow release phosphorus and potassium. And the last one, 0030, that might not apply to you. Soil test, soil test, soil test. Look to see what you might be lacking, and our soils are notoriously low on potassium, and that's why I continue to add that through the course of the years. So this is what it looks like after I do the fertilization. Using a hoe, or in some cases my hands, I work the fertilizer in. Again, a ring around the roses called the drip line, and then you want to mix it into the soil, because it's the microbes in the soil that actually break it down and make it available for the plant. Early spring, after your first pruning, I guarantee if you do a nice base of fertilizer, especially slow release, this will set you up not just for the spring, but for the entire growth. In summary, spring after your first pruning is the single best time to apply fertilizer. Your rose is looking to grow, and you're supporting that by applying a slow release, especially nitrogen. You are setting yourself up for the entire growing season. And really, no matter where you live, you can't go wrong with slow release, and especially in a case like me, where I'm growing in pure sand. The other thing I want to emphasize, soil test, soil test, soil test. That's where you may want to add other nutrients. So in my case, it was potassium. And the last thing, look at your local farm supply. I can buy huge bags of slow release fertilizer at my farm supply in Smithfield at Core Farm. That's far cheaper and more economical than the big box stores. And by doing that in the spring, you're setting yourself up for a really nice growing season. Now, the second most important time to fertilize, this is for ones that want to go from beginner to medium. After your spring flush of roses, you'll notice 30 to 60 days after your spring pruning, you're going to have an abundance of blooms like this. After that happens, that's another good time to put down some fertilizer. Again, slow release is good. That's where you may want to incorporate other things like alfalfa pellets you can find at your local Tractor Supply, cottonseed meal, a lot of the tones, plant tone, rose tone. I like holly tone because it tends to be cheaper. Those are good things because they're organic and they will also last a long time, not only supporting blooms, but lush foliage as well. So, first time in the spring and then about early summer, and you will be good to go.